Okay, so let us continue with the Kuzari. We are on page 293, at the very top of the page, starting a new paragraph, paragraph 12. Kuzari, third essay, paragraph 12. Let's get our bearings. Up until now, we've been speaking about the whole concept of a chassid, a pious or saintly person, learning how to master his life, learning how to really become the owner of his life, and learning how to control his thoughts, his emotions, and learning how to perceive and appreciate that everything that is happening to him in his life is at the hands of is by the hands of Hashem. That I'm not running this show, God is running the show. And so part of that is to come to terms with suffering in life and to find a silver lining in the suffering and tragedies that occur in life. That's the last thing that we spoke about. And we also talked about not only personal suffering, but also national tragedy, coming to terms with national tragedy, taking a broad perspective on things that happen throughout Jewish history, and finding comfort in knowing that we're part of some divine plan. That's how the pious person is able to look at life and see that there's something very, very important that's taking place in this world, and Hashem is involved in every step of the way of this divine plan. And that's how the pious person is able to feel extremely connected, even in the most difficult of times in life. Still feels very connected to Hashem. Gam ki elech begeit salmoves lo irara ki ato imadi. Even when I'm walking in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The chassid really feels that. He really feels that constant connection. And therefore, the Rabbi Yehuda Halevi presents this person to us as a model of emulation. This is what we should strive for. Strive to be constantly feeling that sense of connection, that awareness. And the Khazar king is the speaker now in this paragraph. And his response is, a person like this will live a pleasant life in the diaspora, and from his faith he will bear fruits both in this world and the world to come. But one who endures the exile in a state of resentment has practically lost his present world and his future world. So if a person can have this attitude, then he can have happiness, even in diaspora, even under persecution, even feeling that he's a second-class citizen, even having to go through exile. And Rabbi Yehuda Halevi was starting to feel this in his own personal life. You know, there in the 12th century in Spain, when this is being written, there is a shift that is taking place. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi lives at the cusp, at the very end of what is known as the golden age of Spanish Jewry. It ended right around the first couple of decades of the 12th century. What do we mean by the golden age of Spanish Jewry? We mean that it was a time when Jews were enjoying a very significant amount of religious tolerance and acceptance. Originally, there was even a caliphate, sort of a kingdom set up by the Muslim rulers of the time, the Abd al-Rahman family, who were the caliphs. But that sort of died away around the 10th century. But even though the unified caliphate died out, but there were city-states that were ruled over by benevolent Muslim leaders who were moderate in their approach to religion. They emphasized intellect, they emphasized philosophy. And in that kind of moderate Islamic world, Jews had a role to play. And therefore there was a tremendous amount of both religious growth in the Jewish community, but also physical blessing and tolerance. By the end of the 11th century, beginning of the 12th century, you have a new group of Muslims that come in from the African continent into Spain. First it was the Almoravids, and then it was the Almohads. These were different tribes of Muslims who came in from Africa and had a more radical strain of Islam in mind. Not that much different from what we have today. You've got moderate Muslims, like in places like Malaysia and Indonesia, and in certain parts of Africa. And then you've got radical Muslims who live in, the Middle East, ISIS, Afghanistan, right? Al-Qaeda, things like that. So what came into Spain towards Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's older part of his life was a more virulent strain of radical Islam, and life was becoming more difficult. And how do you come to terms with this? How do you come to terms with this, especially when you've been living your life up until now with relative blessing and plenty? And so the answer is, it's mind over matter. You do it through gaining perspective of what it means to be connected to Hashem regardless of my external surroundings. And that's what he's presenting. But if you try to endure exile in a state of resentment, why is God doing this? I can't stand this. Why are they harassing us and persecuting us? Then you've practically lost your present world and your future world, because you have no life in the here and now. You're not happy. And in the future world, you're going to lose your reward because you're not serving Hashem with joy. And if you don't serve Hashem with joy, then the blessings that await you in the world to come are joyless as well. So that's the attitude that he presents to us. Before we get to Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's discussion of brachot, I just want to expand a little bit upon this idea that serving Hashem with joy is a prerequisite. We know that the Torah says that in the Torah, in Parshat Ki Tavo, that all of these curses will befall you, tachas shelo avaretas Hashem Elokecha b'simcha u'v'tuv leivav merov kol. That these curses rather will befall you because you did not serve Hashem, your God, with joy and a good heart when you had everything. And many of the Meforshim are bothered with this. You mean that if I do all the mitzvahs, I will still get all of the curses in the Tochacha just because I wasn't happy about it? So according to one reading, that's exactly what the Psukim are saying, is that it's not just the perfunctory performance of the mitzvot, but it has to be done with that sense of joy. Not that I dread going into Pesach, but that I'm excited to go into Pesach, because I've studied the halachot carefully and I know what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do. I wanted to share with you, I gave a shiur last night on the halacha of listening to music during Sfiras HaOmer. Many of us know there's a very widespread custom of not listening to music during Sfira. And it's a valid custom, there's validity to it. It's based on the fact that the Magen Avram, one of the commentaries to the Shulchan Aruch, says that just like during the 3 weeks, we're not allowed to have rikudim umecholot, which is different kinds of dancing during the 3 weeks, which commemorate the destruction of the temple. So too, we're not allowed to have rikudim umecholot, different kinds of dancing in circles, dancing other ways. We're not supposed to do that during Sfiras HaOmer as well. This is because it's a time of mourning. It's the time when Rabbi Akiva's students died. It's the time of the Crusades, when the majority of the Crusades took place and so many Jews died in the beginning of the 11th century, end of the 11th century in the Rhineland. And so we commemorate that by putting a damper on our simcha. So you shouldn't have any weddings, no haircuts. You're allowed to get engaged, but at an engagement party, no dancing. So some poskim derive from that the Aruch HaShulchan says this explicitly. He says that in the same vein that you're not allowed to have dancing, it follows that you're not allowed to have music. And it's on that basis that the minhag has arisen over the years that a person should not listen to music during Sfiras HaOmer. For a lot of people, that's a very easy minhag to abide by. For other people, it's a very difficult minhag to abide by because music is very much a part of their lives. Now, I just want to point out, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach of blessed memory, one of the great poskim of Yerushalayim in the previous generation, once commented to his students, and he said, even though this is not an explicitly cited minhag in the poskim, it's nonetheless an accepted minhag, and one should not in any way try to uproot it or tell people not to practice this minhag. But he also lamented privately to his students that he says, people, I get asked this question so often, can I listen to music during Sfira? Or what days during Sfira can I listen to music? He says, I wish people were as medakdek in real mitzvahs as much as they are medakdek in the mitzvah or the non-mitzvah of listening to music during Sfira. He says, I wish people would ask me a question about the laws of ribit, the laws of charging or paying interest on loans. I wish people would ask me questions about the halachas of kibud av va'em, how one is supposed to show proper honor and respect to their parents. I don't get too many shilas like that, he said. I get a lot of shilas about listening to music during Sfira, which is a non-halacha. But that's okay, he says, but that was just an interesting aside. I wanted to provide you with two interesting perspectives of modern-day poskim. One is from Rav Yisrael Belsky, who recently passed away, I think about a year ago, was the big posek in New York for the OU and for and for his own kehillah. And he talks about the stringency of not listening to music during Sfiras HaOmer, and he is a proponent of upholding that minhag. However, he does say something very interesting in the course of that discussion. If you take a look at source number 4, you'll read as follows. Im yesh ve'ha'adam nitzrach k'tzat lemuzika kedei lesameach et atzmo. He says, there are times when a person may need music in order to give himself a lift. Ki ha'olam malei b'mach'ovim. You hear that language? He says, the world is filled with pain. What a sensitive thing to say. Yesh harbei tzarot bichlal Yisrael. A lot of tzaros in Klal Yisrael. V'lifamim nitzrach la'adam k'tzat idud. And there are times, every person reaches a point in life when they need a bit of a pickup. Idud, right? Some support. I need some emotional support. I'm feeling down today. I feel lousy. I feel depressed. I'm not talking about clinical depression. I'm just saying you just feel like you don't want to get out of bed. Kemoshe Elisha kishenevad lo kocholi hitnabei. Amar ve'ata kechuli min again. He says we have an example of this in Nach, the famous story of Elisha the prophet in the second book of Kings. He lost his power of prophecy because he was distraught about something, and he therefore said, do me a favor, I need to hear what Hashem wants of me. Summon a minstrel to play music for me, and the music will put me in a better mood. So he says, skip the parentheses, Al kain yesh lahatir zot bizihirut uvehit apkut. And therefore one can permit listening to an individual, not on a wholesale basis to the public, but to an individual. If someone comes to the Rav and says, can I listen to music? I'm really feeling lousy. The Rav can say, based on his own discretion, you can go ahead with caution and with hitapkut, to dispense it very sparingly, this heter. Aval imhu ragil bekach, azeh bichlal al tismach yisrael gil ka'amim. But what is prohibited is to, just with abandon listen to music from morning until night, which is what the Gemara says is what is wrong to do, even during the rest of the year, not during Sfira, because the Jewish people are not supposed to be so mirthful like the rest of the nations because of the destruction of the temple. V'chasher hamuzika minagenet lelo hefsek. Right? When we say that's what's problematic, when music plays without any interruption. Uvechelek gadol shel hayom hu asuk rak b'shmiat muzika. like a large portion of the day is when he's listening to music. O misha kamba boker v'holech lishoni muzika, arehu over al tismachi sol gil ka'amim. Or if you wake up every day with music, you go to bed every night with music. He says that's where the rabbis found this to be objectionable, not just during Sfira, but during the entire year, because a person has to have some level of reservation, and the truth is we don't really observe this that carefully. There's a whole chapter in Shulchan Aruch that talks about the importance of making a zecher l'churban on a daily basis. Remember the destruction of the temple. How many of you have a piece on your wall that's 1 cubit by 1 cubit of bare space that's not painted or finished at all? It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch that you're supposed to have that when you walk into your house to remember the Churban. A few people do it, but not that many people are careful in it. Mishnah Berurah wonders why that is, but the fact is we're supposed to remember the Churban all the time. But he says if a person's going to be so infused with music that it's their entire day from morning until night, that's what's objectionable. So as long as you listen to music in appropriate dosages, based on your needs, based on your emotional needs, he says that's okay. That's okay. But don't abuse the privilege. So there's an understanding even among the modern day poskim that to deprive yourself of music so that when you're in a state of depression is not appropriate. You're not supposed to be in a state of depression or sadness. You are distant from Hashem when you're in that state. And therefore, even during Sfira, even during the 3 weeks, a person can justify listening to music if that will enhance their day and pull them out of their morass. Yes, Patricia?
How does that apply to someone for whom music is their profession? For example, my husband's grandfather was a klezmer. He was a violin teacher, string teacher. He had his own orchestra. That's how he made his living.
Right.
So obviously, he didn't play for weddings during the Spirit. He was from a Yiddish.
Yeah. No, so when a person does it professionally, the poskim discuss that there's even more dispensation for such a person because he's not doing it as a means of forgetting about the destruction of the temple. He's doing it because that's his parnasa. Yeah. So there's even more reason for leniency there. Again, don't take this as okay, let me go now and hire a band, right, during Sfira. I'm not telling you to forget about the minhag of not listening to music, but you should know that that sometimes what we think is the ikr is really the tafel, and what is the tafel is the ikr. What we take as the mainstay of religious practice, we're sometimes mistaken. The attitude that we have to be in a state of mournfulness is completely antithetical to Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's worldview. A lot of it has to do with the fact that he was a Spaniard, and as a Spaniard, he had a love for the arts. He was a Latino, and he loved life. He loved the arts. He loved music. He loved architecture. He loved poetry. That was part of his life, and he felt that is the key to becoming close with Hashem. Another modern day posek, Yibodel L'chaim Tovim Varuchim, Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg, who is the son-in-law of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, has an amazing little piece on music during Sfira Omer. And there's a lot to discuss. If you want to, the whole shir will be on kosher tube. I'm not going to get into the details. But he says, just take a look at source number 5, these 2 little paragraphs. He says, Achein nireh shemuzika klasit lemashal, she'einena muzika hamiviya lerikudim umicholot, ve'einena minugenet beveit hamishteh, eina bichlal ha'yisur. He says, I believe, and he says, in my opinion, classical music, which is not bringing a person to dancing. You don't listen to a piano sonata and start wanting to dance a jig. That's not what the purpose of the music is. And since the whole prohibition from the Magen Avram is to do things that are going to cause you to dance, music that does not inspire dance is not under the prohibition. So to flip on some classical music on the radio or on your iPhone is not within the prohibition, according to Rav Goldberg. Ve'achein hitiru rabbanim shmiat muzikat kazot afilu bimei ben hamitzarim. And there are many rabbanim, therefore, who permit listening to this kind of music during the 3 weeks. Hainu muzika sheshomea adam toch shehu osek b'melachto lomeid o noheg levad ba'oto shelo yeraden. Especially this is true when the purpose of listening to this music is to keep you functional when you're doing menial tasks. Let's say you're at work, or you're studying, or you're driving in the car and you don't want to fall asleep, right? Heyot ve'ha'adam tarud bi'inyanav, since you're involved in your work and you're not listening to it l'shem music, but l'shem just keeping you occupied in your mind, being stimulated, then it's perfectly okay. And he says that he feels that this is inferable from the Gemara itself. And then he writes, Yesh anashim sheshmiat muzika avuram hu davar chiyuni letzorach menuchat hanefesh. He says there are certain people for whom the element of music in their lives provides them with life, provides them with they need it for menuchas hanefesh. How would you explain that? For peace of mind. They need it for peace of mind. They have difficulty functioning. Kedivrei harambam bishmona prakim, as the Rambam writes in his famous introduction to Pirkei Avos, he writes, Mi shehit orer alav mara shchayra, if a person is filled with depression, yesira bishmiat hanigunim uveminei zemer. He should, like Rav Belsky wrote also, he should remove that depression by listening to different kinds of music. Ki hanefesh tila'a v'ta'achor ha'machshava b'hatmadat iyun hadvarim ha'keurim. He says, because a person's soul, can become murky when he lets his mind wander into murky areas. Kein tzricha hanefesh gam kein lehitasek b'menuchat ha'chushim b'iyun lefituchim u'li'inyanim hanaim ad sheyasir mimenu haleot. And similarly, a person has to indulge all of his 5 senses, in imbibing beautiful and pleasant stimuli in life in order to remove from him all of the negativity that develops in his mind. So you have to look at beautiful things. You have to listen to pleasant things. That's a part of living. And if you allow yourself just to be locked up in your dungeon or in your office, or, sometimes going through a winter in Toronto can be very, very difficult, right? Especially if it's April and it's gray and icy outside, yes? So you need to have some relief to that. You need to have some kind of way of alleviating the drabness and the dullness and the just the sadness of it all. So muzika zu shehi chiyunit lanefesh ein la kol kesher lerikudim v'limcholot shenesu bimei bein habitzarim lefi Magen Avram v'hi eina asura b'yamim elu. He says, listening to music for that purpose, to pull you out of the doldrums of life, was never included, according to Rav Goldberg, in the prohibition of music during Sfira, which is only prohibited if it leads you to want to get up and start dancing. So don't listen to disco. As they say, disco is dead, right? But rather, listen to classical music. Listen to something that is inspirational. Listen to something that will lift you up. Even some Jewish music can be inspirational. I'm the first to admit it, that there is even a small amount of Jewish music that can inspire you. As hard as that is, it might be to believe, but some of it is.
I love Jewish music.
I'm being somewhat facetious, yes.
Can you apply that to art too, like looking at art?
Yes, as long as it's appropriate art, yeah, of course, I don't consider, but there's a fantastic video on art from Prager University, one of those 5-minute videos that they have on YouTube, where they talk about what is real art, the Renaissance masters and things like that. Today, what passes for art, someone defecating in public is art today, but, so you want to stay away from that nonsense, right? But classical art, can be inspirational. Absolutely. It's in that vein that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says that whatever a person can do to stimulate their intellect to positivity and to joy is the key to making them closer to the Ribono Shel Olam. And that's his entree into a discussion of why Hashem gave us brachos to make, why Hashem wants us to make a bracha before and after we eat, why Hashem wants us to make a bracha on thunder, on lightning, on a rainbow, and so many other phenomena in life. The purpose of brachos, as we'll see when we go into this a little bit more, is to enable us to live in that moment. The purpose of making a bracha is to prepare myself intellectually for what I'm about to experience. That's what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm making a bracha. And the key to happiness is intellectual awareness. When I make myself intellectually numb, when I numb myself to the vicissitudes of life, I may think that I'm sparing myself pain, but I'm also depriving myself of life. So even though I may be exposing myself to potential pain, when I make myself acutely aware of what I'm experiencing and what I'm living through right now, it is also the key to profound happiness. Because I know that over the last few moments I've just actually lived, I've experienced something that I may never experience ever again. And for Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, that's the key to piety, because piety equals closeness to the Ribono Shel Olam. And you're never more alive when you're aware than when you're aware of what's going on. We'll continue. That's going to be our, the rabbi says, let's just read the paragraph 13. The rabbi says, and when this person constantly blesses God for all the benefits he derives from the world and for the tragedies that the world deals him, he will only add more pleasure to his pleasure. Even when I thank Hashem for tragedies, I will add pleasure to my life. So the Kuzari asks, how can that be? Blessings are such a burden. And the answer to that question is going to be, as you'll see in the next text. Okay, we'll hold it here in the Kuzari.